Well, hello, family, friends, and YouTube. My name is Joe, and welcome to this end of August 2024. What's growing, right? What's growing? Garden, flowers, hogs, everything. And so I think the last video that I actually released to YouTube was early June, and it was actually one of the garden videos. I think I had a pond video in there. And then it's just been a summer. It's been a summer, some highs, some lows, but busyness. So let's look across this front. As always, we plant zinnias. I'm sure my wife would tell me that there are other flowers in there. I've got a salvaged rose over here that found in a dumpster somewhere. But that's pretty much our flowers. That's really nice as you are kind of traveling past the garden, going down to the pond to see that row of flowers. These zinnias are nothing special, but we usually save glass jars, or we always have extra pints, and to be able to clip a few of those. And then my wife always picks, we have some mint that grows along the garden. She throws some of that in the jars, and it looks great, and it really puts a smile on people's faces. Anyhow, didn't know how to talk about flowers that much, but let's go into the garden here. The garden's in kind of that weird state right now where some things have gotten flipped over already. Some things have been failures. Some things are very much successes. And I'm trying to take mental notes, maybe even some YouTube notes. And some things have just continued to be unsuccessful for years. And I got to change something or move geographic locations on the farm. So right off the bat, you can definitely tell that we are in tomato season. We pretty much grow Roma tomatoes here. I do have a few cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes are one of those things that as we go to different events, it's always nice to take a bowl of cherry tomatoes. If they don't get used, I just put them in a freezer bag. They become sauce or tomato soup down the road. You would not grow cherry tomatoes for preservation purposes, but they are prolific. So anyhow, let's go. First row here, that is my trellis. That usually starts out as sweet peas, and then that goes into putting cucumbers in there. And then I received some pole beans that they're supposed to be closer to a bush bean. I won't plant those again. I've been pulling leaves off and taking over the chickens. They are just way too woody for our purposes. But in front of that row, we have our rainbow, I can never think of the name, chard, right? We have chard, we have some kale, and some lettuces early. And really it's a chard, kale, weed mess is what it is right now. But I've been pulling those leaves off, those beans off. The pigs don't really care about them at all. The chickens kind of like the greens. So just pulling those off. I won't plant those again. They're beautiful though. They're growing very well. And if you liked a pole bean that just keeps on coming, that would be it. I don't like it. I would rather bend over and hurt the back pulling those nice tender green beans. Anyhow, I will get you close-ups of all that. This row here started out as green beans. They've gone through one picking. I've done a little reflowering. I kind of went through those a couple days ago and picked through what was still edible size. And then a lot of this will end up going to seed. You'll just let that bean just get big. The plants will die off once they've established seeds. And then I will be able to take those seeds, dry them out, shell them, and then that will be future generations of green beans here on the farm. If you look way down there, you will see a cattle panel. That was where our onions were. And I've got a late season experiment down there. And we'll circle down there in a little bit and take a look at that. But pretty excited about this. Right here was where my cabbage was. Cabbage, horrible. I need to come up with a better netting system. I threw my old netting system away. It was just not high enough or something, but continued to get those moss underneath it, and they just destroyed it. And so pulled those up. I did have some zucchinis right in front of that broccoli there, and those kind of just, they did well, and then they didn't. And so we got some late season zucchini here, and that will probably take us right in through frost. Zucchini goes in everything here. And honestly, the kids don't know what all, they pretty much assume that everything has zucchini in it. A little bit here, a little bit there. It makes your food go a little bit further, and the hope and dream is that there's a vegetable getting shoved into that food. And so they know brownies, zucchini, banana bread, zucchini, eggs, maybe zucchini. And so that's pretty good. The broccoli down there, broccoli is just putting off those little broccoli tips. Go out there and cut it, continue to cut those back. A lot of worms again. I've been spraying that down with 2 ounces of neem oil, a little surfactant, and then a gallon of water. And this morning we just got about a half an inch of rain, and so depending on the forecast, I will probably mix up in our batch and spray those down. And that's really been doing a pretty good job at keeping those worms at bay, because nothing like roasting your broccoli, and you salt them, you do all the stuff, they're still worms. Sorry if I'm lengthy, but this video is really for me. You can tag along if you want, but you will also notice that there is a healthy crop of weeds at this point of the season. We are just a few days away from going back to school. We are putting things into jars, and we're juggling, doing a lot of driving, hustling kids around, and so this is where we're at. Tomatoes. I have 63 tomatoes in the main 3 rows. Romas. We haven't had too many tomato worms, those big old fat things. I did notice a few, was able to pick those out. And usually in the evening, they kind of show their ugly face a little bit more. We did have some fungus gnats, and those seem to eat away at the leaves a little bit. But once again, a little spray of neem oil, and that just eliminated those. And I don't know if they're really detrimental to the fruit, but they did some work over on the leaves. These are Roma tomatoes. Roma tomatoes are determinate, and so I don't know a lot of times if my leaves and plants have a blight to them, or if they're just dying off. But usually any yellowing, I just kind of cut off and try to discard those leaves. But once again, we're at that time of the season now where as leaves die, they just die, and you're just hustling, right? I did do a couple experiments with weave, and I figured out that my weave really wasn't tight enough. I didn't put a stake in between each plant. I thought that was kind of overkill. If I'm gonna put a stake next to each plant, I might as well tie the plant to the stake. But the plant actually kind of scissored its way with that cord. And so I got to figure out a different system. I do like the openness as compared to the cage, but the plants, they're falling over. I also like that how compact you can put them with that weave. They're about 16 inches apart, where with cages, they're 3 feet apart. And so 3 feet apart sometimes seems a little bit much, but maneuverability of me, you need them 3 feet apart, right? So anyhow, that is tomatoes. So let's talk the next row. Next to 3 rows of tomatoes, we've got more, right? We've got a couple cherry tomato plants. And I got the feeling that I'm gonna have to talk over that chicken behind the camera. So we got these 2 cherry tomato plants, and they're prolific. They just keep producing. And like I said, I don't think anybody would produce and grow cherry tomatoes for canning or preservation purposes, right? I think that would be a lot of work. However, if you were doing a roadside stand, these things just keep producing. Beautiful fruit, It doesn't require spraying usually, and just pretty easy. We'll go past that. We have 5 tomatillo plants. I've never grown tomatillos before. My wife brought home 5 tomatillo seeds from the library. They're doing some seed thing. I started all those. They all started. I planted all those. I had no idea how big they would get. I think she just wanted to make one batch of that green salsa, right? Salsa verde or something like that. And now we got 5 plants, and they've kind of fallen over, and probably we just needed a handful of tomatillos. So they need to be inside cages or some kind of trellising. They're going to get big. They're going to get really big, and probably 1 or 2 plants would be more than a person would need. Continuing down that line, we have another couple of zucchini plants, and they're still producing. But you know, a lot of times their production has a lot to do with when that rain comes. If it's raining in the morning when the bees are kind of doing their thing, they won't get germinated. And I think some of you guys understand that. But I got 1 or 2 zucchini on that plant to pick today. Past that, we've got another row of green beans. And then I have my weave tomato plants right here, right in front of me. Boy, that chicken's he's just going. She's doing something. She's mad about something. We have our peppers. 3 Anaheim chili style pepper. They go by lots of names, but just a real small chili pepper. 3 jalapenos, and then bell peppers. As far as the eye can see, right? And those bell peppers have been keeping us in supply so far, and that's pretty good. We'll get to that spot where it gets overloaded, and then we're shoving them in people's vehicles, right? Okra. I need to rethink okra. My okra just wants to die. It absolutely wants to die. I've got a few flowers set on. Usually okra likes the heat, and we've had plenty of heat, but I think they don't like the wet. And since that's the row closest to the pond, we've probably dropped, I would say, 3 to 4 feet, probably 3 feet in elevation from the entrance of the garden to this spot. And I think it's too wet. So I'm going to try okra 1 more season, maybe up at the head of the garden, and see if that makes a difference. Either that, or I got to build this up, which might be a possibility as well. We've always enjoyed okra, and as you can see, if okra's not doing good, I'm not worried about the weeds around it. Sorry. Go past that, you got a lone zucchini plant. We've got some dill growing for late pickles. We've got a little bit of carrots. I pulled the cardboard off too fast, Eric, and kind of messed up with that germination. I thought that they'd all germinated. I pulled that off and basically fried those little carrot plants, and so won't have many carrots, but we'll have a few to throw in this and that. And then I have some volunteer tomatoes down at that far end, and I'm pretty sure that most of them are cherry volunteers, but they'll grow up. Some of them will fall over and flop over because they're not going to be supported well. But a lot of that will just end up becoming feed for chickens when the chickens come into the garden late fall. Let's go down that far end. So we're at the far end of the garden with the strawberries. And a long time ago, I made a video on rejuvenating strawberries. I think it was like a square video, and it wasn't done very good. I took a T-post and set it up on a long stick and put the camera up in the air. And I actually injured my arm that day, and kind of silly. But we have gone through and did this early June cut them back with the scythe, tilled the row, trying to till one way or another, and then the plants kind of start running their runners. And so you're just kind of weeding through. I've weeded through these a couple times already. You can see up there, there's a fourth row up there. That is a new row. Was able to transplant off of these. We had a couple cool days in June, I believe. And they're getting established and they're sending out runners. And the goal always is, I think it's like 10 to 15 plants per foot. And so some spots you got 20 plants a foot, some spots you got 3. And so that's the goal. And we're getting there. We're getting there. They're looking pretty good. I came through and hoed right along the edges the other day, kind of redirecting those runners. You try to pull those flowers so they send the runners, and grow. So here's my squash trellis. I trellis on cattle panels. I usually use about 3 T-posts. I tie them off with my old extra Romex wiring, and in there is spaghetti squash, butternut squash, and pie pumpkins. And so looks kind of tight, but you can see that there is space in between those two so that you'll have some air movement. It does take a little bit of training. We'll try to walk and not trip, right? It does take a little bit of training. You got to kind of train those, putting pumpkins, squash, and the like up on a trellis. It's got some real advantages. Biggest advantages, it doesn't take up a lot of space. They go vertical. None of those fruit are real big and heavy. They can hang on the vine. Other advantage is that usually the bottom is pretty neat. You can keep up on weeding because the plant goes up. It doesn't go out. Another advantage, they don't tend to mold. They're not sitting on the ground, covered up in leaves, covered up in grasses. They tend to dry off. That plant dries off, and that's really good. I used to always lose squash to mold and to rot from the ground. That's not the situation here. And so lots of advantages. I think it's kind of a neat thing, a fun thing. A little more costly because now you got T-posts and you've got panels that need to be purchased, but they will probably outlive me. Maybe not, but disadvantage is that you can see right here I've got my tripod sprinkler. It blocks a sprinkler from anything else, so probably a drip irrigation with this would work much better. But Joe, I don't think that you would ever get some really big fruit with this method. And I will say that, I don't know if you can see that spaghetti squash there, but it grows. As long as they got nutrients, they get water, plenty of sunshine, things are gonna grow. And so, I've talked enough about that, right? Gee whiz, Joe. Asparagus is just doing what asparagus does. It's burning out. Last year I ended up getting a woodchuck in there and I didn't quite understand that, but anything that happens in there, you're not going to know. And then we have horseradish and rhubarb and that sort of thing. Way down there, we've got a lone little comfrey plant. And so we picked those up earlier, maybe May or so. Little tiny plants, a couple of them, planted them pretty close to each other. I put some mat down around it, compost, fertilizer, been watering it pretty regularly. And it's doing absolutely great, and I need to figure out cuttings or splits or what I do, because I think that would be a plant that I would like to see medicinally get bigger. It's a little raised bed. We have some late season lettuce started, and then we'll start adding to that. And then this is late season experiment, right? And honestly, you never know how this is going to work. But we got a cattle panel here. Once again, I try to raise those cattle panels up a little bit. Some of that has to do with just keeping rust and rot from happening, but it also allows me to get underneath and do any kind of weeding I need to. And so about every 6 to 8 inches or so, we've got a cucumber plant. And then we've got some peas in front of that. We've had late peas before, and it's roll the dice, isn't it? Same thing with cucumbers. We have a mid-September frost and it's all waste. But at this point, they're growing great. And I'm very hopeful, very, very hopeful that this will be successful. And so, but it's fun to experiment. You can see that pool noodle down that far end. That is just cut down and covering up the end. So that's all that is. I've got beans up to this spot, so we're not walking by, but that's a walkway there. So I cut that, put that old pool noodle on there because, man, you cut this fence, you'll bleed, right? And so we don't want to bleed. I'm gonna pause this video and I'm gonna do some B-rolls in this garden space, and then we're going to go on to some other places. So let's go. All right, I thought I was gonna be able to do all this before that sun popped out, and that sun's coming out. The old phone doesn't care for the sun. I think it's spent too many times, too many days in my pocket, right? And so those lenses, they don't love it. But let's go. Chicken Run Orchard. We've got chickens in a run, and we've got an orchard planted inside of it. And so we had about 23 or so leftover chickens from prior years. I've added 13 to that mix, and those chickens, they seem good. They seem healthy. They seem pretty strong. They're growing. I'm noticing that the feed is not quite lasting as long as it did per bag. And so they're eating it. Either that or I got a lot of mice. Probably have some mice, but not that many. Orchard, we got some rocket ships overhead. We had a nice little scare with gypsy moths. I think they call them something else now, but gypsy moths. And we had to do some work. Me and the little guy did that. I think I talked about in the last video. And these trees bounced back pretty good. They really, really did. You can look at a few of these guys here. And this was planted last summer, and it's looking absolutely great. And so you see the orchard here. What's nice about this Chicken Run Orchard, I've talked about it a few times. The only real pressures it gets, besides like insects and whatnot, is the chicken. So as long as you have the cages around it. But lest I even say it, deer have left it alone. I shouldn't have said that, but I did. Where the orchard on the other side, deer demolished that. And that's why it's never produced fruit, right? And so as far as fruit grows this year, I think this tree here has, this is a Honeycrisp, and it had maybe 40 apples on it last year, maybe 30 come harvest time. It's got 2 or 3 this year, but plant's growing out really nice, reaching up towards that sun, and that's good. You can see I'm 6'3"-ish, and that tree's growing really, really well. This tree here is either a Fuji or a Gala. I don't really know. And you can see that it is also growing up pretty nice. Now these are semi-dwarfs. We don't want these to be super giant, but I need them taller than I am. Love to be able to have a ladder out here eventually, but we need to make sure that the trunk can support it. This is a Golden Delicious, and you can see that we do have some fruit on it this year. We got quite a bit in there. I don't know if the camera can pick all that up, but I've been spraying this with a little bit of that neem oil mix, and the fruit's a little not as tender as you'd find from a big orchard, but I'm pretty happy with that, and you can see that that tree is going up. Top of that thing is probably 10.5 feet tall, and it is spreading out exactly like we would hope it to. And the trunks are looking strong. They're getting real strong. They got a little bit of movement still, but we've had some high winds, and they did pretty well. I'm not really sure what this is. I thought this was a Fuji or a Gala, but we'll see. Maybe it's another Golden Delicious, but this thing is pretty loaded down. You can see that the growth on this tree is not quite as spectacular because, once again, I probably left too much fruit on the tree. But if you look at the trunk, I did stake this one a little bit because it's got a little bit of real top heavy. And so I kind of wired it off a little bit to support it in those winds. But that fruit's coming along. Like I said, not really sure what it is. If it's a Fuji or a Gala, it's going to start reddening up here. There is no Red Delicious. We got tasty apples here. And then the two that I planted this past spring. Well, it is a busy day around here. Everyone's driving by. This is an Empire, and it got hit pretty hard by those moths. And then that is also an Empire, and if you've never had an Empire, it's got some bite to it. My kids used to call it Vampire because it bites you back. Hey, there's some of those little chickens. These are these new Isa Browns, and the best we've done so far is we've gotten 2 eggs out of them in a day. And you can see the difference here, but they're coming along. They're coming along. So that's the orchard. Let's go look at the pigs. So let's look at these piggies. 3 pigs. These pigs have grown the best of any pig I've ever raised. Now, we did 2 in 2020. We did 2 in 22. And these are 3. These are a Berkshire mix. Mostly Berkshire in their blood, but they're a mix. And so they've grown really well. We got Miss Judy here, and then there's Chris and there's Scott. And I don't know the difference between Chris and Scott, but my kids do. One of them is very friendly, and one of them doesn't like me. It's very standoffish. It'll come up and sniff my hand. Once in a while I get sneak a pat in. It jumps and jostles around. But honestly, she's the instigator. She gets the boys riled up. She's the one that runs towards me. If I have to go in and do any work, I had to pull the feeder out there, destroying the doors on the feeder, and it was down in the mud. So I pulled the thing, did a little bit of work, recorded half of a video, and then I let it disappear. But she's the one that's up on my business, and so she'll probably be the first one to go. Maybe not, but anyhow, I'm doing some prep work, getting geared up for hog butcher in November. In 2022, we did butcher our 2 hogs, and I would say that was successful. It was not super efficient, and there was probably some meat wasted, but it happened. And so taking a look at these guys, they're probably getting a little bit bored. They eat an awful lot. I've got to go to the feed mill today, and they are probably, I'm guessing, a month, they're probably $170 a month in feed. They say that if your pigs are super efficient, it'll be a 3-to-1 conversion. So every 3 pounds, they'll gain a pound. And then you multiply that by 3 pigs, right? And so, and it's really hard to tell, when I buy feed, is a 3-to-1. It's probably not 3-to-1. They have too much space to be 3-to-1. They are out in the weather. They do have a nice wallow pit over there, but it's not air conditioned. I think factory standards for one pig is something like, oh, she's peeing. That's pretty good. I think in factory farming, each pig gets like a 4 by 2 foot area or something silly. It's 8 square feet, 10 square feet. It's super small. Here, they've got too much movement, but I don't think that I would want them in too small of an area either. In the future, I will have their feed and their water. I'll have that on concrete though. I will definitely have that on concrete because it's just, you see some haziness in there. You can hear them, they just pound on that feeder all the time. The feeder honestly is too small for 3 pigs, but I built that back in 2020. Thought it would be okay. I think it'll be okay. I'm just gonna have to fill it a lot. But they just, mud. And we've had a lot of rain here in Michigan, and it's just perfect storm, right? I will also have some kind of housing on concrete. They've dug in. I've had to go in there once and kind of reshape things, and it's a losing battle. I don't think I'd want them on concrete, but I think that having the feed up there and the water up there, you can see right in front of their feeder, it's just water. I've put in a few buckets of sand in there. I think if I scoop it, some of that water will run downhill, but it's just water, right? Huh? And so, like I said, some of these are super friendly, almost too friendly, and they're looking big. They're looking big. They're looking good. I need to get out here with that tape measure and do that estimation. But we're still shooting for November. If I have a real cold weekend in October, maybe we'll go then on one of them, just to kind of lower that feed cost. But there will be plenty of pork in the freezer this winter. So I'm gonna leave you there. Eric reminded me over Gagne Farms, they just did their potato harvest, and I looked at that and I thought, oh, I have potatoes out there, but I'm gonna have to string trim them back to even find the hills again. So still got some potatoes out there. But yeah, things are growing here. It's been a different summer, not a bad summer, but I'm finding that I got to share my time, all right? I got to share my time. And so, whew. Well, yeah, there's a lot of calories out there. I will tell you that. So now I'm going to let you go. I don't have a clue how long this video will be, but that's okay. That's okay. You're probably not coming for entertainment. You're coming to check up on me. We're doing pretty good here. Like I said, we're starting school again in just a few days. Looking to coaching soccer too. So you got to mix that one in, and raising some pork, right? Raising some pork. There you go, big guy. This is my big guy here. Look at him. Look at him. See those ribs? You see those ribs? See those front shoulders? And so there you go, guys. Have a great day. I've got a couple more videos in the mix, and so just trying to make sure that I add worthwhile content, or I'm going to be quiet watching other people. So I'm Joe. Thanks for spending some time here on the farm with me, and checking up on me, and I want you to have a great day. Bye now.